Okay.
Hi, everyone. Today, my guest on this video interview is Enrico Dell'olio, and he is a high-intensity trainer in Italy, in Brescia, Italy. He trains in the high-intensity tradition of Mike Mentzer, which regular readers of this site will know that I'm very interested in, and I train that way myself, at least after my own fashion. So I'm very pleased to have Enrico Dell'olio on my site today. Thanks for coming, Enrico.
Thank you, Dennis, for inviting me. And it's my first interview in English, but my English is fluent, so let's see what happens.
Okay, great, fantastic. Enrico, when I talk about high intensity training, either on my website or on Twitter, a lot of people are very curious about what exactly high intensity training is. For example, I tell them that I work out 2 times a week for 30 minutes at a time, and they say, wow, what's that all about? Because most people think you got to be in the gym all the time to build muscle and so on. So to start, I would like to ask you, what is high intensity training? How would you explain that to someone who's new to it, or to someone who's already doing conventional weight training?
Yeah, okay. What is the difference between high intensity training and high volume training? High volume training is everything that is not high intensity training, basically. So at the school, when we define physical exercise, and when I say at the school, because in Italy we have a school, high intensity training academy, where we teach personal training, how to train with these methodologies. So everything started in the 70s, and the precursor of high intensity training is Arthur Jones. Arthur Jones is the inventor of the Nautilus machines. So Arthur Jones started to work also with Mike Mentzer. Mike Mentzer has been one of the greatest champions in bodybuilding, and he developed a technique of high intensity training that was heavy duty. It's called heavy duty. So basically, when we talk about physical exercise, there are 4 concepts to take into consideration. That is frequency, intensity, volume, and progressive overload. When you increase the intensity in bodybuilding or weightlifting, so more you increase the intensity, for intensity, we define the moment that we reach the muscular failure, or the capacity to involve all the fiber of the muscle that we are training. More we go close to the failure, to the moment that it's impossible to go on with another rep, and more the intensity is high. So just to make you an example, to give you an example, if you think about running, you can run for two hours, for example, for a marathon, not very fast, because if you want to run very fast like a sprinter, you can do it for 10 seconds. So intensity is, if you do something at the maximum power that your body can generate, you can do it just for a few seconds, basically. But if you want it to sustain and afford for a long period of time, you have to decrease intensity. What happens? When you increase the intensity, it's impossible to work for a long period of time. And higher is the intensity and lower must be the volume. And for volume, we think about the quantity of exercise, so the series, the exercise, or the repetition that we do in the gym. So more we get closer to the muscular failure, and less we can do, of course, like running. If you run at the maximum speed, you can run just for 10, 15 seconds. And more time you will need from one section of training to the other, because when you go closer or you arrive to the muscular failure, the effort for the organism is so high, so big, that for compensate and super compensate that effort, it takes a lot of days. So basically the difference between high volume and high intensity training is the intensity of training, the capacity to reach the muscular failure during the training.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Now, so what are the advantages of high intensity training over conventional training? And conventional training, for the audience, I will say conventional training is usually multiple sets, typically 3 and often more, is it is not necessarily training to muscular failure, and also a higher frequency of training, usually several times a week. Bodybuilders getting into the gym even daily sometimes.
Right.
So that's conventional training. And so how do you see high intensity training? What are the advantages of it over this kind of training?
First of all, the time. For example, if we are talking about anti-aging technique, and we are talking about people 40, 50, not competing people, not professional bodybuilder, but just people that want to get in shape and stay in very good shape. Most of these people, they have not the time really to go to the gym 4 times per week, 90 minutes every time. And sometimes if you have to think also to reach the gym, have a shower, altogether it can be 1 hour more. So 2.5 hours every time you go to the gym. So it means 4 times per week, that is the average, reaching 10 hours per week. And per month is 40 hours per month. Basically, 1 working week, you're gonna spend it in the gym. Most of the people, 40, 50 manager or autonomous that they work with their business, they don't really have the time, 40 hours per month. So just 1 working week to dedicate to the bodybuilding, to the weightlifting. Second thing, this scientific study tells us that more important is not the volume or how many exercise you do and how many repetition, but actually is the metabolic impact that you give in a singular shot to your organism. I'm going to give you an example for that, Dennis. You can expose yourself to the sun of February. I don't know, there in Los Angeles, maybe it's different. But here in Italy, we have the seasons, you know? So
sure.
in Europe. And in February, it's the winter time. If you have a nice day in the winter time with 10 degrees, you can stay 2-3 hours exposed to the sun and you don't get tan. You don't get, but if you go in July, that is this period, for example, where the sun is 38 degrees centigrade during the day, you need just 10 minutes of sunlight to start to get red. That is the intensity. In February, the intensity of the solar ray is so low that 3 hours is not enough to start the process. But in July, it's so high that 10 minutes is already enough to start the process. Muscular growing is basically the same. It's an adaptation to a stress that we are going to give to our body. So it's not the quantity of stress. For example, if I take this pen in my hand and I do a curl 100 times, it's not enough 100 times to increase the size of my biceps. But if I do such sufficient weight that brings me in 7, 8 reps, 9 reps as a maximum to the muscular failure, I have started the process, it's like the sun in July, of compensation, a super compensation that the body needs to afford the effort. That is a big effort because I reach in a short period of time the muscular failure to grow up.
Okay, very good. And so then other than time, what are for example, an aspect of high intensity training that particularly interests me is recovery. So I'm 63 years old. Recovery time is a very important consideration. When I was doing conventional training, I often had great difficulty with recovery time. I would feel pretty lousy for a couple of days after a training session, and I'm doing much better with high intensity training. How do you see that as an important aspect of high intensity training?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, one of the advantages of high intensity training is that you don't have really a protocol where you have to define the intensity, volume, and frequency of training. You define your frequency in relation to your capacity to adaptation, to the adaptation. When you train with the conventional technique, high volume training, the basic techniques that you use in the gym normally, you go 4 times per week, but you don't know if 4 times is enough, is too much, or 5 times. You just think that doing more is better. With this technique, you use a diary and you check every time the progression of your training by checking the increasing of the weight or the repetition in a strict range that normally goes between 6 and 10 repetition where you go to muscular failure. So you see every time, if the time that has passed, the frequency, we call it, from one session to the other has been enough to let you recover completely. And of course, when you are 60 years old, the time that you need to pass from one session to the other must be more than when you are 20. So this technique make everything optimized. You can optimize your training by defining the frequency that you need to compensate and supercompensate, overcompensate. A thing that normally doesn't happen with the normal training, the high volume training that you use in the gym.
Right. I think with the ordinary conventional, as you say, high volume training, most people think, well, you know, gee, I don't feel so good today, but I have to go to the gym. And so they go to the gym and they do it anyway. They probably don't make a lot of progress. So regarding frequency of training, what do you advocate regarding frequency, and what are if you can give us some examples of maybe what are the most frequent, let's say the people you train, what is the most frequent versus the least frequent, and how do you see that?
Yeah, normally if you work with the heavy duty, that is the most famous technique of high intensity training. Normally the average is one session every 4 days. That is the average. So with one session that, as you said, it is about 20-25 minutes, because you can do more. And if you do the 20-25 minutes in the right way, you just think, come on, let's stop this, because it's something that I can't go on. I start to see Jesus Christ and all this all together. Because, and you know it.
I know it, yes.
You know what I mean? And after 25 minutes, you say, no, I don't want to go in this shit again for at least 3 or 4 days, because you really feel sick. Normally, the sensation that you have the day that you train, if you have trained in the right way, is like the same sensation that you have the day before having a flu. Completely exhausted. Do you know what I mean? You had this feeling?
Yes.
Yeah, and you need a few days to compensate for. Normally, the average is 4 days. You need 4 days. And you know that is good, because when you go back to do the same muscles that you have trained the last time, you will see normally an improving. Every time you see an improving, or in number of repetition in the street range, that is 6 and 10 more normally, or in the weight that you can lift. Normally it's 4 or 5% if you have already reached the end of the scale at 10th. Okay. This is the average, but there are also people that we can call hard gainer, people that for them is difficult to gain muscle. I was an easy gainer, still am an easy gainer, and I compete in the past. But there are people that they need even more, 6 or 7 days to recover completely after 20-25 minutes of very high intense training.
Yeah, that's interesting. Clearly, at high intensity training is some very serious stuff, and I know the feeling when I'm the only one in my own gym that I know that works out in a high intensity style, and I always feel like I'm working twice as hard. I mean, there are some guys there that are serious about weights and everything, but you know, they sit down and take 3 to 5 minutes in between sets and everything. And I'm just, anyway, yes, it's serious business.
And there is also another big difference, Dennis, that I would like to puntualize.
Yes.
The way you lift the weights is fundamental. So biomechanically, a squat is a squat in high intensity training or high volume training. But the way we do it in high intensity training is really very different. You know that we use to emphasize all the 3 forces of the muscle. So the concentric, the eccentric, and the isometric force. The concentric basically is the positive force. Let's say when we do a lateral raise, is the force that we need to raise our arm to the level of the shoulder. The isometric is the moment that you stay stable, that you can keep one weight stable in one point, in the point where that is called a peak contraction, where the muscular fiber are contracted to the maximum level. And you have another 4 seconds to get down, the eccentric movement. this free movement that are the free forces that a muscle can generate, they must be emphasized. So it's not like in the high volume training that you move in this way without control many times, bouncing from one side to the other.
Lots of momentum.
Yes, taking momentum, right.
Right.
In the high intensity, the form of exercise is so important that define the results, the outcome of the training.
Okay, very good, very interesting. And now, to get into some particulars here, do you what role do things like drop sets or rest pause training play in your system of training, if any? And for example, now people who don't know about high intensity training, the idea is you go to momentary muscular failure. So some people would say, well, that's it. That's all you can do. But Mike Mentzer himself did advocate rest pause training, and
yes.
and I'm pretty sure he advocated drop sets as well. And so, what is your opinion on those?
Okay, drop sets, it was very clear in drop sets. When you reach the failure once, you don't have to reach it more time at the same with the same exercise. For the rest, yes, there are some other techniques to increase even more the intensity of training. In heavy duty, for example, there is the pre-exertion, for example, that is one set that you do with an exercise where you isolate one muscle, followed by an exercise that you work the muscle as a multi-articular. For example, let's take an example. A dumbbell fly is an exercise that isolates your chest, okay? A bench press is an exercise where you use a chain of muscle, the chest, the shoulder, and the triceps to do the same exercise. In a pre-exertion, you use one exercise to get to the failure that is isolation, like dumbbell fly, followed immediately by an exercise like the bench press, where the shoulder and the tricep are still not tired, and they can help you to finish, let's say, the principal muscle that is the chest that we are training. This is one technique, for example, pre-exertion. The rest pause is another technique that Mike Mentzer was using. As basically is one repetition, maximum repetition, with an interval of 10 seconds, followed by another repetition with another interval of 10 seconds, 3-4 times. So basically it's 3-4 times. And after the second, sometimes you have to eliminate on 20% of the weight from the barbell because it's already too much. There are other techniques like the training in eccentric, for example, just not doing the positive fashion of the movement, but just, let's say, for example, for a curl, for biceps, just emphasize the eccentric part, the negative part. And in that case, use 40% more of the weight, and you load down in 10 seconds the weight until you do it a few times with a spotter normally, until you can't, you move in 3-4 seconds, and it's impossible to go on in negative. These are all techniques in heavy duty to emphasize, for example, the level of intensity of your training.
Okay, very good. One thing that I noticed when I began high intensity training, and I still notice this, is that I get muscle soreness virtually every time that I work out. And I did not get that with conventional training. With conventional training, high volume training, it's pretty much business as usual. With high intensity training, I get sore, like I say, virtually every time. Is there a correlation between muscle soreness and the gains in strength and muscle mass, or is this just something that happens?
It's nobody knows exactly why you have soreness. We know, for example, that is an inflammation, that it comes from the degeneration of the muscle that has been trained. If the training will be particularly intense, you create broken fiber inside of the muscle, and you have this degeneration that can create this pain. But there are many other things that we don't know about the soreness. Normally the people like to feel the soreness after the day after training, because it's like, yeah, I've done something, right, man?
Right.
I do something right. But it's not, in reality, there is a 15% of the people that they don't experience soreness. So let's say 80%, 85%, they experience it. We can say probably there is a correlation. It's very difficult to assess which kind of correlation, because there are also a 15% of the population that they don't feel any soreness, but at the same time, they still increase in weight or repetition and in muscle mass. So let's say, I would say muscle soreness is nice to feel, but with high intensity training, the important thing is the diary, the progression of the weight or the repetition every time you enter in the gym. If you have this progression, constant progression, it means that you have a readaptation, a super compensation, overcompensation that is going on. And normally you see your body and your weight changing in time.
Okay, very good. Yeah, that makes total sense. I was reading a scientific report the other day that said that, there's this idea about muscle damage being necessary, and it turns out, no, not really necessary. It does happen, but it isn't completely necessary. Does your particular training regime differ in any way from Mike Mentzer, or are there any parts that you emphasize more or de-emphasize, or tell us about your particular program?
Yeah, basically with the people, when they start, I always start with the heavy duty. It's the basic, you start to learn what it is high intensity, and you start to move the weight in the right fashion. So the 3 seconds in the positive way, 2 seconds in the isometric, and 4 seconds in the concentric. When the person starts to move in the right way and they reach, as a matter of fact, the muscular failure, we can shift to another technique. I have developed in the years another technique that is called hybrid protocol, heavy duty zone training. Zone training is another methodology that has been developed by Brian Johnston. Brian Johnston is a Canadian technician of high intensity. It's the same school of Mike Mentzer. It comes from Arthur Jones. Every one of these guys come from there. And develop is this technique that is a very interesting technique that it's very interesting because it complete the work of the muscle in a different way respected to the heavy duty. And it's complementary. So you can, in a certain way, mix the two techniques, and you can create an hybrid protocol of the two techniques where you train basically 20 minutes with 80% of the technique is heavy duty and 20% with the zone training, and you get the benefit of the two techniques together. But before doing this, you must first train with the heavy duty and learn how to do it, because it takes a lot of time, really a lot of time to learn.
Okay. All right. Very good. Does cardio or high intensity interval training play any role in your system? Do you do it yourself, or do you advocate it, or is it strictly weight training?
Yeah, it's basically strictly weight training. When we want to get a little bit thinner, basically, when you want to get thinner, the diet is 80% of your results. There is no training. The diet, when you start the diet, you get thin. If you don't start the diet, you can train every day, you can run, you can do whatever you want, but you don't lose fat. So if the diet is correct and you are doing the right things, most of the time you reach a very good state of shape without adding any aerobic activity. But in certain cases, high intensity interval training can be something that you can add. And normally we add it in people that are resistant, or the people that needs for the last 2-3 kilos something more. So high intensity interval training, the Tabata protocol, where you do 30 seconds, okay, maximum strength, and then 30 seconds of recovery. We use it in the morning before breakfast. So since you are in the morning, when you wake up before breakfast, you are in a special condition of fasting, where if you start training in that way, you really increase your production of GH, growth hormone, and adrenaline. And this will go on for 4 or 5 hours more after the training. So you go on 4 or 5 hours to burn fat more than normal, just because you do 15 minutes of high intensity interval training fasting in the morning. And we use it there.
Yeah, that's interesting. I know the thing about this is something I say about diet all the time, because there's this very mistaken belief that exercise is going to help people lose weight, and really, like you say, 80% it's all about diet. It's all about your food. So yes, I'm primarily interested in the high intensity interval training, strictly for the cardiovascular fitness. But I feel that my own training, my own high intensity weight training, my heart is beating fast and my lungs are pumping when I'm doing that.
I would like to add something. As a matter of fact, we don't need a lot of aerobic training, because high intensity, as you know, in high intensity training, you don't wait 3 minutes with the telephone on a bench between one set and the other. The time that must pass from one set and the other normally is the minimum time that you need to recover your breath. And in a fit person can be, it depends. If you do a squat, probably 1 minute and a half, 2 minutes. If you do a curl for the biceps in 40 seconds, you just switch it to the other exercise. This thing create an high intensity interval training. And I can give you some data. We have measured in the past some of our athletes or people that we train, and just by training in high intensity training, these people had a VO2 max similar to a football player, without never doing any running, just 2 times per week, high intensity training with the weightlifting, heavy duty system. Yeah, and they had a very good aerobic fitness.
That is very interesting. I'm glad to this is exactly what I suspected, but I'm glad to hear it from an expert like yourself, because that confirms to me that I am getting a great cardiovascular workout when I go in to do high intensity weight training. Yes, I definitely feel that. Here's a question, sort of devil's advocate question. I hear from people, I guess an objection I hear from people when I talk about high intensity training is, well, you're to be a real bodybuilder, you've got to do more than that. You've got to be in the gym, constantly. And in fact, as far as I know, most conventional most bodybuilders now train in a conventional manner, high volume manner. What would you say to that?
So, okay, one of the greatest bodybuilder ever has been Dorian Yates, and he was a pupil of Mike Mentzer. He was training 3 times per week, 40 minutes for time. And we are talking about a guy that with an incredible genetic. So this guy had the genetic that could let him win 6 times the Mr. Olympia. So capacity not just to develop incredible muscle mass, but to recover to a speed that was not human, basically, because this guy was incredible. So we can see also in very high competitive bodybuilders that can make it with the high intensity training. In natural bodybuilding, so we have to make a distinction. But in bodybuilding, most of the time, professional bodybuilders use drugs, anabolic steroids. These increase a lot the capacity, not just the protein synthesis, the capacity to increase muscle mass, but also the recovery capacity. And most of these guys are already phenomenal. They are incredible. They are not, we can't compare these people with the normal people. So if you use drugs plus incredible genetics, high volume training is possible, but there is always a limit. So I don't know if you know how it is in the world of bodybuilding, but in the last 10 years, the quantity of drugs that have been used is increased a lot. And at the same time, has increased a lot the volume of training. So the quantity, the number of exercise, the number of sets and repetition, and at the same time, the frequency in the gym. There are a lot of people training every day, basically. I suspect that with high intensity training, they could reduce a lot the quantity of drugs and having the same results at the end. So basically, part of these drugs, they need it to compensate the high frequency.
Very interesting concept. Yeah, I never thought about that before. Yes, the drugs allow them to do more work, to perform more work, but maybe if they didn't do as much work, yes, they wouldn't need the drugs. That's interesting.
In the natural bodybuilding, in people that don't use drugs, you have to assess or find a way to optimize your production of testosterone, GH, all the hormones. And high intensity training is by definition the way where you can optimize all the factors, because you follow everything in a way, and you build your training, your frequency in the gym, the quantity of exercise, just in relation to your capacity to building muscle mass and recovery.
Great. What do you, as far as diet goes, can you give us a brief rundown of what you advocate for people? Obviously, people have different goals, whether it's fat loss or muscle gain. And could you touch on both of those and as to what you advocate?
Right. Okay. If we are talking about anti-aging, paleo diet is the best way you can work. We can speculate on the quantity of proteins. There is a big speculation at the moment how many proteins we need as an athlete to get us in fit and functional. But on the fact that a paleo diet, so fruit and vegetable, meat and fish, olive oil and so on, is the best way for our species to stay. There is not a lot to talk about this. All the rest is pure speculation. We see continuously that all the people who put on a paleo diet, normally they respond all the marker in the bloodstream and the brain performance, the physical performance, losing weight, and so on and so on. So paleo diet and anti-aging is the best solution. In bulking muscle is not the best solution. Why? Because when you are on a paleo diet, you control by using fruit and vegetable, basically your quantity of insulin during the day. Is the main hormone that is controlled. You lower the quantity of insulin to a level that is anti-inflammatory. It's perfect for the anti-aging. But we know that insulin is the most anabolic hormone in our body, even more than testosterone. So if you suppress the insulin for a long period of time, you normally don't have enough fuel, let's say, to increase your muscle mass. So what you need? You need a compromise. Normally we use, I have developed for bulking period, a diet that is called phasic diet. It has different phases, as a matter of fact, 4 phases, where you use different quantity of carbohydrates and also protein. It's very important also to make cycle of protein for natural bodybuilder, of course, or natural people that want to increase muscle mass without using drugs, okay, drugs that can optimize the process, the anabolic process in a natural organism that must work with the hormone that it produces, you know. So just to make it clear, definition, anti-aging, paleo diet with different quantity of protein, it depends. It's very good, perfect. In case of bulking, paleo diet doesn't work so well. So we use some technique where we increase during the week the quantity of carbohydrates. Sometimes in relation to the training, the day of training, more carbohydrate, the other days, more protein and more fat. And sometimes when we are using the hybrid protocol, the training protocol, where we train 2 days in a row, and then we don't train for 8 or 9 days. And in 2 days in a row, we use high quantity of protein and very low quantity of carbohydrates. I don't enter today in this, in all the hormonal things that can happen by doing this, because it's a long thing. But maybe, if you like, one time we can make a video call where we talk about dieting and how to use protein and carbohydrate to increase GH, testosterone, decrease insulin, and modulate the different hormones to have the best results.
Great. Enrico, this has been a great interview here, and let's see. Now you have a website, or it looks like maybe two websites. Where can people find you online?
Okay, in my website, www.enricodell'olio.net, and then the other website basically is a website dedicated only to high intensity. There are 700 articles on food, training, podcast on high intensity. The problem is that everything is in Italian. So they can translate with Google Translator the articles and everything. If they want to talk with me, there's no problem because I speak English and also Spanish, very fluent, and Italian, my language, of course.
Right. Right. Yeah, great. Because I used Google Translate just this morning to read your short biography online. So yes, it works fine. And then you're on Twitter too, and Instagram. So Enrico, thank you so much for agreeing to this interview. You have actually. I was a believer in high intensity before, but now you've totally confirmed my opinions coming from an expert like you. It all makes so much sense, and so thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you to you, Dennis. It's been really a pleasure. My first interview in English, so I'm very happy for everything.
Oh yeah, you did. Yeah, you did great. You are fluent in English, as you said. All right. Okay. All right. I'll catch you later, Enrico.
Okay.
Okay. So here we are. Anyway, I stopped recording. So. Hey, seriously, that was really good. You just hit on everything that I wanted to hear, and that I think the audience will be interested in hearing. And so that was just perfect.
Perfect. Let's see what the people say. If we see that the people like it and they write a lot of comments, we can make an interview on the food, the nutrition on high intensity. If you want, Dennis, it's okay. I have a big debt with you for the ferritin. So.
Okay. Okay. Well, that would be great. All right. Well, thanks a lot, Enrico, and we'll talk again.
Okay. Thank you, Dennis.
Okay. Ciao.
Bye.